Welcome to Life Stories, where truth speaks louder than applause. Today's story begins with a family reunion, a Harvard-bound golden boy, and one quiet professor who everyone forgot was even part of the family. But what happens when the so-called underachiever stands up in the middle of a backyard barbecue and says 7 words that leave the whole family speechless? 7 words that unravel secrets, crush expectations, and force everyone to look a little closer at who they've chosen to celebrate and who they've chosen to ignore. This isn't just about family pride. It's about being seen, being enough, and what it costs to stay silent when you've worked your whole life to matter. So hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because what starts with a round of applause ends in a way no one, especially the golden boy, saw coming. Let's begin today's story. The first thing Elliot Walker noticed when he stepped out of his car was how perfect everything looked. Uncle Tom's backyard in Charlotte, North Carolina hadn't changed. The same pristine hedges, solar lights lining the cobblestone path, and an oversized grill that gleamed like it had been polished for the 4th of July, even though it was only a family reunion. It was the kind of suburban setup you'd find in lifestyle magazines, a place where nothing was out of place, except, maybe, for Elliot. He adjusted the collar of his pressed shirt, the one he ironed twice that morning, but still couldn't smooth the stubborn crease on the sleeve. He told himself he wouldn't stay long. Just enough to grab a plate of ribs, hug the relatives he didn't actively avoid, and give his mother something to talk about besides why Elliot never shows up anymore. She hated those questions, especially the way they were whispered, like his absence was some moral failing. The smell of grilled meat hung in the summer air, sticky and dense. Somewhere behind the house, kids screamed over a slip and slide while someone blasted Fleetwood Mac from a Bluetooth speaker. Elliot exhaled. A smile wouldn't come. He rounded the corner and stepped into the performance. The lawn was full, folding chairs, floral dresses, polos, handshakes. Familiar faces, unfamiliar warmth. His mother spotted him first, waving a plastic plate of fruit like a flag. She wore one of her signature loud blouses, the kind that always reminded him of county fairs and forced smiles. "Elliot," she breathed, eyes scanning him for damage. "Thank God. I thought you weren't coming." "I almost didn't," he replied. Her face didn't flinch, just nodded. "Go say hi to your uncles," she whispered, already glancing around to make sure people had seen him. "Connor's here. Just got back from orientation." There it was, the real reason he'd been summoned. Connor Blake, the golden boy, 6 years younger, recently accepted into Harvard with a full ride honors program, glowing recommendation letters that practically lit up in the dark. The family's private group chats had buzzed with it for months. Elliot had read every smug emoji and humble brag caption. He hadn't seen Connor since the kid was awkward and acne-prone, trying to flirt with girls at Thanksgiving using magic tricks. Now, taller, leaner, a haircut that said, "Legacy starts here." Elliot moved toward the grill area. Men in golf shirts raised beers, talking about interest rates and boat repairs. Someone clapped Uncle Brian on the back and said, "You must be proud, Harvard man." "You know," Brian replied with mock modesty, "we always knew he had it in him." Connor's mother, Tracy, stood by the drink table in a tailored navy blazer, pearls gleaming beneath the July sun. He was top of his class, she chimed in, had his pick of the Ivies, but Harvard was the best fit. Elliot stood nearby, sipping lukewarm lemonade from a red Solo cup, unnoticed. No one asked about Columbia. No one asked about tenure track, or the lit journals, or the hours spent reading drafts at 2 a.m. Not even Aunt Carol, who once asked him if his PhD meant he was like a therapist or something. Then it came. That moment Elliot had seen coming from the second he stepped out of the car. Grandma May, sitting regally in her plastic lawn chair, wrapped in a crocheted blanket like royalty awaiting tribute, leaned forward and said, in her slow, syrupy southern drawl, "Some people just aren't academic." The words dropped like a coin in a well. A ripple, then quiet. Elliot felt something settle in his chest. Not fury, not shame, just stillness. A knowing. He was used to being erased, but not today. He set his cup down. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. funny, he said, loud enough to slice through the tension. I'm his professor. Everything stopped. The kind of silence that magnifies every background detail, the lazy whir of the ceiling fan, the slow sizzle of forgotten meat on the grill, the squeal of a sprinkler in the distance. Connor turned toward him, expression twisted in confusion. You what? Elliot didn't look at him. He looked at Grandma May. Her eyes blinked, twice, before she turned her face away, tightening like wet cloth being wrung out. Nobody spoke. Not Tracy. Not Brian. Not Aunt Carol. Elliot didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. He picked up his drink again and walked toward the garden, letting the air hit his face like a wave of permission. The truth nobody in that backyard knew, or cared to know, was that Connor had landed in his comparative literature seminar during his first semester. Requirement. One he clearly resented. He'd shown up late, skimmed the readings, submitted essays that were so lifeless, Elliot once wondered if they were ChatGPT experiments. And still there was the entitlement, the quiet assumption that effort was optional when you had pedigree. Elliot hadn't told him who he was. Neither of them did. It was easier that way. The worst part wasn't the work. It was overhearing Connor tell a classmate, "This guy doesn't even read our stuff. Lit classes are such a joke." That one had cut deeper than Elliot cared to admit, because he did read every line. Stayed up grading when his eyes felt like they were full of gravel, wrote comments in margins, cared. And now he wasn't invisible. Later that day, he sat on the porch, watching kids launch water balloons like grenades. His mom sat beside him, not saying anything. Just gently rested a hand on his knee and squeezed. It said more than any apology ever could. Across the yard, Connor stood alone near the garden, no longer the center of attention. Just a boy in a too-crisp shirt, hands in pockets, staring at the grass like he'd lost something. Elliot didn't go over, because it wasn't about revenge. It was about being seen. And for once, he was. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? What would you have said if you were Elliot? Don't miss what happens when Connor finally speaks up for the first time. Part 2 drops next. Elliot was halfway through a voicemail from a colleague about a rescheduled committee meeting when a soft knock on the car window startled him. He looked up. Connor stood there, hands buried in his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to fold himself in half. The boy, no, the man, who had been the center of a backyard orchestra just hours ago, now looked like he didn't know the notes anymore. Elliot considered pretending not to see him. But something about the way Connor's eyes didn't flinch made him roll the window down. "Can I sit?" Connor asked, his voice smaller than Elliot remembered it ever being. Elliot nodded, and Connor walked around to the passenger side. They sat in silence for a minute, maybe more. The kind of silence that has shape, weight, a name you don't want to say out loud. "I didn't know you were you," Connor said finally. At least not at first. Elliot didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the windshield. "I figured. I saw a photo at my mom's place. You were in the background. After midterms, that's when I put it together. You didn't say anything. I thought if you didn't, then I didn't have to." Elliot let that sit. The heat of the car was beginning to cool as the sun dipped behind the trees. "Was I really that bad?" Connor asked. Elliot could have lied, could have smoothed it over, offered some soft landing. But he didn't. "You weren't curious?" Elliot said. "And you didn't try." Connor's jaw flexed. "I thought the class was beneath me," he admitted. "I didn't think it mattered. I've always been good at school, but I've never liked reading. All those old books. I just don't see the point." "They're not old," Elliot said, turning now to face him. "They're just honest in a way most people aren't ready for." Connor looked down at his hands. His fingernails were bitten to the quick. A small, ugly detail that suddenly made him human. "I used to do that too," Elliot said. "Back when my father used to raise his voice during dinner." Connor blinked. "I didn't mean to disrespect you," he said. "I thought I had to be the best at everything. And when I realized you were the one grading me, I panicked. I thought I had something to lose. That's not on me. I know." They sat there until the porch lights across the street began to flicker on. Someone dragged a garbage bag down a driveway. The night crept in, careful not to interrupt them. I guess I thought you'd be proud of me, Connor said, voice quieter now. Everyone else is. Elliot turned to really look at him then. For the first time since Connor was a scrawny kid, chasing him around the porch with a toy guitar, begging to form a two-man band. I could be, Elliot said, but not if you think pride means clapping for the version of you that never had to do the work. Connor didn't speak, just nodded slowly, swallowing something bitter. He left without saying goodbye. A week later, Elliot opened an email with no subject line, no greeting, just a paragraph. I read that line from the Zora Neale Hurston book you assigned. The one about, there are years that ask questions and years that answer. I think I've been living in a year that didn't know what to ask. Still don't. But I'm trying. No signature, no apology, no attempt to redeem, just words. Raw, honest. Elliot didn't reply. He just saved it to a folder he titled Quiet Truths. Classes started again. The hallways of Columbia's Humanities building buzzed like usual. Posters curled at the edges, calls for poetry slams, Marxist film discussions, open mic nights. Elliot walked past them all. Lectures filled, half students curious, half checking off a requirement. He taught. He graded. He lingered a little longer over the margins, wrote a little more than necessary. One day, a student named Jasmine waited after class. She was one of the few who still took notes on paper. Her handwriting was tight, precise, like she didn't want to take up too much space. "Professor," she said, hovering near the edge of his desk, "can I ask something? Not about the syllabus?" Elliot nodded. "Why do people only say they're proud of you after you've succeeded? Why don't they say it while you're still trying?" It hit him harder than he expected. He thought of his PhD years, living above a liquor store, eating ramen, writing until his wrists burned. Not a single family member came to his dissertation defense. But now they clapped, so long as he didn't make them uncomfortable. "I think people don't know how to love someone in the middle," he said. "It's easier when there's a headline, when they can say, 'See what he became.' But trying? That's messy, makes people nervous." Jasmine nodded. "I just wanted to hear someone say that." She left. No more words. And Elliot sat there, alone, staring at a half-erased whiteboard and a line from Baldwin. Have you ever wished someone had seen you before you succeeded? Before you figured it all out? In the next part, Elliot returns home to find something waiting in the mail, something that changes everything. Don't miss what happens when Connor finally dares to stop performing. Elliot hadn't planned on stopping by his mother's place. He told himself he was just in the area, though the area was a 40-minute detour, and he knew it. But something in him wanted to be near something soft, something that didn't expect anything except his presence. She opened the door with flowered hands and slippers on, eyebrows raised. "Didn't know you were coming," she said. "Didn't know I was either." She didn't press, just turned back into the kitchen where dough was rising in a bowl and the smell of something cinnamon lingered. Elliot sat at the old oak table that still had faint pen marks from his childhood homework. The house was smaller than he remembered, but warmer somehow. He looked around. Most of the framed photos were of his nieces and nephews, birthdays and graduations. But in one corner, slightly tilted, was a picture of him in his regalia, alone, standing on the auditorium steps the day he earned his doctorate. "I saw Connor on TV," his mom said after a long silence. "He was on some panel, youth leadership or something." Elliot nodded. "He looked tired," she added. "Older, not like before. He's growing up. He wrote to your uncle," she continued. "Said he might take time off next semester, thinking about switching majors." Elliot looked up. "To what?" "Didn't say. Just said he's rethinking things." He sipped his coffee. It had gone cold. "Did he talk to you?" he asked. "No, but he mentioned you. Said you were the only person who ever told him the truth." That hit deeper than he wanted it to. Not pride. Something heavier, like grief, like recognition. "You did the right thing," she said gently. Elliot didn't answer. He wasn't sure he believed that yet. That night, back in his apartment, he opened the folder labeled Quiet Truths, stared at the old email, then closed it again. Some part of him still wondered what it was all supposed to mean. Were they just two people forced into roles neither had auditioned for? The quiet cousin, the golden boy, trapped in someone else's narrative. A few days later, a letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A proper letter with a Boston return address. The handwriting was neat, no salutation. I'm sorry, not just for that day, but for before, for assuming your silence meant approval, for thinking I had to perform all the time to be worth something. I was afraid the applause would stop if people knew I didn't always feel smart. You didn't humiliate me. You freed me. I didn't know how heavy the clapping was until it stopped. I'm applying to the education program next semester. I want to teach. Maybe not college, but somewhere. Somewhere that matters. That was it. No name at the bottom. It didn't need one. Elliot folded the letter carefully and slid it into the old worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God he'd picked up months earlier, the one with scribbles in the margins. He placed it by the window where he graded, and left it there, waiting. Thanksgiving came. He didn't go for them, not even for his mother. He went for himself, to face it all head on, the jokes, the dismissals, the invisible years. He was done pretending none of it had ever hurt. This year, it was Aunt Linda's turn to host. She'd redecorated. The place looked like a Pinterest board had exploded. Ceramic pumpkins, plaid table runners, copper cutlery no one was allowed to use. There were about 20 of them crammed into the dining room. Kids ran wild. Adults circled each other with conversation about interest rates and delayed flights. Connor wasn't there. Elliot had asked on the drive over. His mom just said, he's figuring things out, which could mean shame. Or maybe freedom. Uncle Tom made the same toast he gave every year about family and gratitude. Then came the real reason for the gathering. The brag parade. One by one, people offered updates. New jobs, new kids, new kitchens. Jenna's twins got into Duke. Marissa opened a Pilates studio. Gabe made partner. Then Aunt Linda cleared her throat. We're just so proud of Connor, she said with a sigh that begged applause. Even though he couldn't make it, Harvard keeps him busy, of course. He was selected to lead a seminar for incoming freshmen, very prestigious, and his paper on education reform got picked up by a journal. The table clapped politely. Then she turned to Elliot, her smile all sugar and lemon. Of course, Connor's success comes from a long line of academics, she added. We all remember when you used to teach, right? She paused, grin widening. How's that going? Elliot set down his fork. He looked around the table. No one blinked. No one defended. Same script, different year, but not this time. You mean still teach? He asked calmly. It's going great. I just got tenure. A beat of silence. Tenure? Someone said. Wait, where again? Elliot reached into his bag and pulled out the printout he'd folded 3 times before leaving the house. He hadn't planned to use it, but he'd brought it, just in case. He slid it across the table to Aunt Linda. It was the journal, the one that had published Connor's paper. Right beneath Connor Blake's name, advised by Dr. Maya Sinha and Dr. Elliot Walker. The room froze. He's my student, Elliot said, his voice steady. Has been for over a year. That seminar he's leading, I nominated him for it. Stillness. He's earned a lot, Elliot continued. But first semester, he nearly failed. He was overwhelmed, lost. I held the line. I made him do the work, and when he finally did, it was brilliant. Not because he's naturally gifted, but because he finally stopped performing and started asking real questions. No one moved. I didn't say anything before because I didn't want to embarrass him, Elliot said, quieter now. But I'm tired of sitting here every year while this family claps for a version of him that doesn't exist. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Aunt Linda's smile had vanished. Uncle Tom looked like he was chewing his tongue. I should go, Elliot said, grabbing his coat. Papers to grade. He stood. His mom didn't say a word, but her eyes shone with something that looked like pride. Then, from the far end of the table, someone clapped. Cousin Nora, the one who taught middle school science and never got asked about it. Then Gabe. Then Matt. It wasn't a standing ovation, but it was enough. That night, Elliot got a text. I heard what you did. Thank you. I don't deserve it yet, but I'm trying too. He stared at it a while, then replied, Good. Now go write something real. And that was it. No reconciliation speech, no tearful hug, just truth. Finally free of applause. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever wanted to be seen for who you really are, not who people assume you are? If this story resonated with you, comment 100 below and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video. Someone out there needs to hear this too.